Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Beneath the faint glow of a dimly lit bedroom, a solemn atmosphere lingered, as if the air itself knew of an impending trial. The closet door revealed a carefully curated ensemble, a deep burgundy cocktail dress, an eerie silence beckoning within its folds. Its companion, a pair of patent leather heels, stood proud, as if guarding a secret. On the bed, a battleground awaited. Nude stockings, a padded bra, and a makeup kit neatly arranged, ready for war. Mark the time, for the countdown has begun. In 30 minutes, Anelise shall be party-bound. Eleanor's words, sharp as daggers, pierced through the door, carrying an undertone of sweet vengeance. Agitated, Angelo combed his short blonde hair with his fingers. He knew the root of this predicament. His tongue, the sword that had wounded, now turned against him. Her fashion choices were matronly, her makeup trying too hard, her walk in heels like a newborn giraffe. Each barb delivered with a smirk across family dinner tables, each one intended to establish his superiority in the family hierarchy. Last week's comment about her looking desperate in that dress at her age had been the final straw. Eleanor had calmly set down her fork, dabbed her mouth with a napkin, and issued her challenge. You think it's so easy to be a woman, Angelo? To be judged constantly on appearance? Fine. The Hendersons' anniversary party next weekend. You'll go as a woman. My treat. His wife, Marissa, hadn't even tried to hide her amusement. Mom's right. You've had this coming for years. And now, here he stood, in front of an outfit designed for maximum discomfort and humiliation. 25 minutes, Eleanor called out. Angelo touched the fabric of the dress. The material felt slippery and foreign against his fingertips. With a heavy sigh, he began to undress, mentally rehearsing how he'd laugh this off later with his friends. Just a silly bet, just his crazy mother-in-law. The stockings came first, slithering up his legs with unexpected difficulty. Then the padded bra, which he fumbled with for several minutes before securing the clasps. The dress zippered up the back, requiring contortions he hadn't attempted since high school gym class. Finally, the heels, 3 inches of torture that immediately sent shooting pains up his calves. A tentative glance in the mirror revealed a ridiculous sight. A clearly masculine face atop an artificially feminine body. His 5 o'clock shadow stood out starkly against his pale skin. A knock at the door. Time for makeup, Eleanor announced, entering without waiting for permission. She assessed him with clinical detachment. Sit, she instructed, pointing to the vanity stool. This will take skill. Angelo sat awkwardly, knees together by necessity in the tight dress. Let's just get this over with. Eleanor's hands moved with practiced precision. Foundation to mask his stubble, contouring to soften his jaw, eyeliner, mascara, eyeshadow applied in layers, a dark red lipstick to match the dress. Throughout the process, she maintained a running commentary on technique that Angelo tried desperately to ignore. Finally, she stepped back. Now, for the final touch. From her purse, she produced a blonde wig, styled in a shoulder-length bob with soft waves. I had this custom made. The color matches your natural shade exactly. As she positioned it on his head, Angelo caught sight of himself in the mirror and felt a jolt of something unexpected, not revulsion, but recognition. The face looking back possessed a strange familiarity, as if he'd caught glimpse of someone he'd known all his life, but never properly met. Meet Anelise, Eleanor said, her voice softer than before. My daughter-in-law's sister, visiting from out of town. Angelo stared, transfixed. I look convincing, Eleanor supplied. More than I expected, honestly. Standing shakily in the heels, Angelo turned to view himself from different angles. The dress hugged curves he didn't know could be created. The wig framed his face in a way that brought out features he'd never noticed. A certain softness around the eyes, a natural arch to his brows. The Hendersons know me, he protested weakly. They've met you twice at most. Trust me, they won't recognize you. Eleanor's smile held triumph, but also something else. A spark of unexpected kinship. Now, shall we join the party? Marissa is waiting downstairs. His wife's reaction was everything Eleanor could have hoped for. Marissa's jaw literally dropped, followed by a burst of startled laughter that drew the attention of her father across the living room. Oh my God. Marissa circled him, taking in every detail. Mom, you're a miracle worker. Eleanor accepted the compliment with a regal nod. Anelise cleans up rather nicely, doesn't she? Angelo wobbled slightly in the heels. Can we just go and get this over with? The car ride to the Hendersons was silent, tension hanging thick in the air. Angelo, no, Anelise for tonight, stared out the window, hyper-aware of the unfamiliar sensations. Stockings clinging to legs, the press of the padded bra, lipstick that required conscious effort not to smudge. Remember, Eleanor said as they pulled into the driveway of an elegant colonial home. You're Anelise, my niece from Boston. You work in publishing. You're divorced. No children. I know the cover story, Anelise snapped. Let's just get through this nightmare. The party was already in full swing. Sophisticated men and women in their 50s and 60s mingled throughout the spacious home, champagne flutes in hand. Anelise felt dozens of eyes turn toward their small group as they entered. Eleanor! The hostess approached, embracing her mother-in-law warmly. So glad you could make it. And Marissa, lovely as always. Her gaze shifted to Anelise, curiosity evident. I don't believe we've met. This is my niece, Anelise. Eleanor performed the introduction smoothly. She's visiting from Boston. Anelise, this is Patricia Henderson. Pleased to meet you, Anelise managed, horrified at how high and unnatural her voice sounded. Patricia didn't seem to notice anything amiss. Any family of Eleanor's is welcome here. Please, help yourself to champagne and hors d'oeuvres. We're celebrating 40 years of marriage tonight, proof that miracles do happen. As Patricia moved on to greet other guests, Marissa leaned in close. You need to relax. You look like you're about to bolt. That's because I am, Anelise hissed. This is humiliating. It was supposed to be, Marissa replied without sympathy. That was the point, remember? Now own it for a few hours. Abandoned by her wife, who drifted off to chat with friends, Anelise found herself cornered by Eleanor and two of her contemporaries. This is my niece I was telling you about, Eleanor said. Anelise, meet Barbara and Joan, my bridge partners. Eleanor mentioned you work in publishing, Barbara said. How fascinating. I've always thought I had a novel in me. Anelise reached for the fiction they'd created. I'm an editor, primarily for literary fiction. What drew you to that field? Joan asked, seemingly genuinely interested. The unexpected question required a real answer. Anelise hesitated, then found herself speaking from somewhere authentic. I've always loved how the right words in the right order can create worlds that feel more real than reality. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily after that. The women asked questions about her fictional life, and Anelise found herself embellishing the backstory, adding color and dimension. She described an apartment in Boston overlooking the Charles River, a cat named Fitzgerald, weekend trips to Cape Cod. More surprising was how differently these women interacted with Anelise compared to how they'd always treated Angelo. There was warmth, inclusion, absence of the competitive edge that colored male conversations. When Anelise shared an observation about a recent bestseller, they leaned in to listen rather than waiting for their turn to speak. An hour into the party, Anelise excused herself to find the bathroom. Locking the door behind her, she braced her hands on the marble countertop and stared at her reflection. The makeup was holding up well. The blonde wig looked surprisingly natural, and her eyes, there was something in them she'd never seen before, a kind of alignment, as if pieces that had been slightly out of place had shifted into their proper positions. "What is happening to me?" she whispered to her reflection. A knock at the door jolted her back to the present. "Just a minute," she called out, hastily checking her lipstick before opening the door. Eleanor stood waiting. "Everything all right?" "Fine," Anelise replied automatically. Then, with unexpected honesty, "This isn't what I expected." Eleanor tilted her head. "What did you expect?" "To feel ridiculous. To count every second until I could escape." Anelise struggled to articulate the strange sensation. "Instead, I feel... I don't know, like I'm playing a part that fits better than my real life." Something shifted in Eleanor's expression, the triumph softening into something more complex. "Let's get some air," she suggested, leading the way to the Hendersons' back patio. The evening air was cool on Annelise's skin. Music and conversation drifted out from the house, but the patio was empty. Eleanor leaned against the railing, studying her niece with newfound interest. "You know," she said finally, "this was supposed to be a lesson in humility, a way to make you understand what it feels like to be judged solely on appearance." Anelise nodded. "I deserved it. The things I said to you were cruel." "Yes, they were." Eleanor didn't sugarcoat it. "But something unexpected is happening here, isn't it?" Anelise stared out at the manicured garden, struggling with emotions she couldn't name. "I don't understand it myself. I should be counting the minutes until I can tear off this dress and wig. Instead, you're wondering what it would feel like to stay, Anelise, a little longer." Eleanor finished for her. The words hung in the air between them, a truth too new and fragile to be examined directly. Anelise nodded almost imperceptibly. "Well," Eleanor said after a long moment, "that's certainly not what I anticipated when I plotted my revenge." Anelise laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. "Life's full of plot twists." Eleanor regarded her thoughtfully. "The burgundy suits you, but I think jewel tones in general would work with your coloring. Emerald green, perhaps. Sapphire blue." "Are you giving me fashion advice?" Anelise asked incredulously. "Consider it a peace offering." Eleanor smiled, the first genuine smile she'd ever directed at the person who had been Angelo. After all, every woman needs a shopping companion who'll tell her the brutal truth. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of conversation, champagne, and an increasing sense of ease in Annelise's borrowed skin. When they finally said their goodbyes, several of the women hugged her warmly, extracting promises to meet for lunch before she returned to Boston. In the car ride home, Marissa studied her transformed spouse with a mixture of confusion and fascination. "You enjoyed that," she accused. You actually had fun. Anelise didn't deny it. I did. That wasn't the point of this exercise. No, Eleanor interjected from the driver's seat. But it might be the point of something else entirely. Back at home, alone in the guest bedroom, Anelise carefully removed the makeup with the cleansing wipes Eleanor had provided. The wig came off next, placed carefully on its stand. The dress was unzipped and hung up, the stockings and undergarments folded neatly. Standing in boxers and a t-shirt, Angelo stared at the masculine reflection that should have felt like coming home. Instead, it felt like a step backward, a return to a role that had never quite fit. Sleep didn't come easily that night. The next morning, he found Eleanor alone in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee. She looked up as he entered, her expression unreadable. So, she said simply. What happens now? Angelo took a deep breath. I don't know. Eleanor nodded as if this was the answer she'd expected. When I planned this little revenge scenario, I thought you'd be humiliated, learn some empathy, and we'd establish a more respectful relationship moving forward. Reasonable expectation, Angelo admitted. Instead, I've inadvertently helped you discover something fundamental about yourself. She sipped her coffee. Quite the plot twist indeed. Angelo sat across from her, hands wrapped around his own coffee mug. I've never felt anything like that before. The way everything just clicked into place. That feeling has a name, you know. Eleanor's voice was gentle. There are communities, resources. I'm not ready for all that. Angelo cut her off. I'm still processing what happened last night. Fair enough. Eleanor studied him over the rim of her mug. But perhaps Anelise might like to explore a bit more before making any decisions. My offer of shopping guidance stands. The question hung in the air between them. An olive branch, an invitation, a doorway to something entirely new. I think, Angelo said slowly, Anelise would like that very much. The first shopping expedition took place the following weekend, with Marissa's cautious blessing. What began as exploration quickly became something more definitive as Anelise tried on one outfit after another, each confirming what she'd sensed that first night. Eleanor proved to be an invaluable guide, her eye for style unerring. No, not the floral print. Too busy for your frame. Try this emerald sheath dress instead. Anelise emerged from the dressing room in the suggested dress, which hugged her body in a way that emphasized newly padded curves while minimizing broader shoulders. Perfect, Eleanor declared. We'll take that one, and the sapphire version as well. By day's end, Anelise had acquired the foundations of a new wardrobe. 3 elegant sheath dresses in jewel tones, appropriate for office wear, 2 more casual outfits for weekends, lingerie that helped create a more feminine silhouette, and a pair of kitten heels that were infinitely more comfortable than the stilettos from that first night. Next weekend, we'll tackle accessories and makeup, Eleanor promised as they loaded bags into the car. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is a woman's wardrobe. Over the following months, their shopping expeditions became regular events, evolving into lunches where Eleanor offered not just fashion advice, but insights into navigating the world as a woman. Today, we open this space to help others find the outward expression that matches their inner truth. She caught Eleanor's eye in the audience, acknowledging the path that had brought her here. Sometimes, Anelise continued, the people who challenge us most give us our greatest gifts. And sometimes, revenge can look remarkably like redemption when viewed from the other side. Eleanor smiled, dabbing at the corner of her eye with a tissue. After the speeches and the ribbon cutting, after the champagne toast, and the first customers eagerly exploring the boutique's offerings, Anelise found Eleanor examining a display of scarves. "So," Eleanor said, holding up a silk scarf in a swirl of blue and green, "what do you think of this with the navy dress we saw last week?" "Perfect," Anelise replied, taking the scarf and draping it across her mother-in-law's shoulders. "Absolutely perfect." They stood side by side before the mirror, two women who had found their way to genuine affection through an unlikely beginning. Their reflections smiled back at them, Eleanor elegant in her understated gray suit, Anelise radiant in emerald green, her blonde hair catching the light. "You know," Eleanor said quietly, "of all my accomplishments, I think you might be my masterpiece." Anelise laughed. "I created myself! You just helped with the wardrobe!" "Details matter," Eleanor insisted. "The right dress, the right shoes, they can change everything." Anelise couldn't argue with that. After all, a burgundy cocktail dress and patent leather heels had changed her entire life, transforming a punishment into a revelation. "To details, then," she agreed, straightening the scarf around Eleanor's neck. "And to the women who noticed them." Outside the boutique window, life continued its flow, people walking past, unaware of the small miracles taking place within. Inside, two women who had once been adversaries stood together in perfect understanding, bound by something stronger than family ties or shared history, the recognition of authentic selves, finally free to exist in the light. Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!